Welcome to the Alphagenix Podcast, where every week we speak to incredible guests from the world of health, well-being, longevity, biohacking, and of course, men's health. And I'm delighted this week to be joined by Dr. G, founder of We Talk Wellbeing, author of 3 books, and the last one being Resilient as Fudge. That's your area of expertise, isn't it, I think?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a real pleasure to be with you today. It's very much a warm day, but a happy day. So that's good.
Absolutely. And we've known each other for a while, haven't we? Met on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
We seem to be on a similar sort of path. We've just been talking about it. We often post very similar posts every day. So it's nice to get you on and have a deeper conversation.
absolutely. I think two fellow entrepreneurs, we probably understand the real importance of, that mind-body connection, especially in the kind of work that we do, a fast-paced, high-pressure environment. So I think that's where we always shared our similarities, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So where did your journey start then?
Gosh, it's always funny when you look back, isn't it? And I think that is a message for the people out there is, you know, time waits for no man and it goes so fast, right? So I think there's a lesson in that actually when you look back on where your journey started. And I've been in the industry, the fitness and wellness industry now for 29 years. So I'm showing my age. Originally went off and did a physical education degree. I thought I was going to become a teacher, but I was always interested in business. So from a very young age, I decided to combine fitness and business together. So I started as a personal trainer. I then became a manager of multiple fitness clubs. And then I was very, very fortunate that the equipment supplier that came in to redo all of these clubs actually decided that I had talent and that they were going to use that talent. So I went off and under their support and guidance, I started to build clubs out for this equipment supplier. So I'd like to say that was the big apprenticeship, over 200 clubs in 10 years.
Wow.
Building them from the ground up for entrepreneurs, whether that's public or private sector. And during that journey, I went off and did it for myself. And it was a massive apprenticeship. Really, I don't think there's a bigger gift than being able to use someone else's money and build their business. So, if you want to call it consultancy, that's what I was doing. And I then fortunately sold that business and moved to Jersey.
Wow. And then since then, you're probably more known now for your work in resilience.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I got to Jersey, I actually did a little bit of a swerve where I went into education, became a vice principal of Jersey's only college and university. But at the same time, I was still then building business and I actually started to build my own clubs.
Mm-hmm.
So I then sold, and during the time of selling the first club, I just got really fascinated by what helps people deal with adversity, deal with pressure and challenge in a way that some other people don't deal with it. And that's why I entered into the world of getting very curious about why resilient people seem to be happier, more content, and maybe more successful, depending on how you measure that. So, I went off and spent 6 years learning about resilience and becoming a doctor in resilience.
Amazing. And does the work in resilience, does it border the work on flow state?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what's so lovely about resilience, but I think it's also a double-edged sword. What makes resilience sometimes difficult for people to grasp about what it really means, because there is so much within there that it does enter other theories that you would be aware of, and when you mention flow, that would be looking at performance. Performance is only one aspect of the outcome from being resilient. But to be resilient demands 3 domains. So it's about how you think, that's the cognitive domain. It's about how you feel, the affective domain. And then it's also about how we behave, which is the self-regulatory domain.
Okay.
It's quite a complex construct, and I think that's why sometimes people find it hard to grasp. And what I love to do in the work that I do is to really break it down so that people can understand it simply. And I think that's really important, that all of the people out there that work to build skills and build mindset really break it down so that everybody can access that.
Yeah.
I think it's really important.
Do you work one-on-one with people, or do you work in groups?
So I do one-to-one executive coaching. I then do also middle management coaching, and then we do group work where we go into corporate and we work with, we have a program called Resilient Leaders, and then we have resilient teams and resilient individuals. So we go all the way from one person all the way up to big groups, which is really cool.
Yeah, fantastic. So I guess a lot of people are going to be watching this thinking, I've got no idea what Glenda's talking about. So imagine I came to you then. Do you want to take me on like a journey? So I came to you, I don't really know what resilience is, but I've been referred to you, or I know I want to improve my life in some way.
Yeah.
What's the process? Is there an evaluation at the start? How does it begin?
Absolutely. It's really important that you said that. So first and foremost, we really break down what we mean by what it is to be resilient. And I do just want to mention that I always say resilience is like fudge. And I don't know if you were aware that when fudge was first ever discovered, it was because they fudged it up. So It was a mistake. It wasn't meant to be fudge. It was meant to be something else. So that's why I think it's such a lovely metaphor to say that resilience is like fudge, because resilience is the culmination of everything that we do when we do it well, but when also we don't do it well. So to be resilient is to really learn from all of our past experience and our past learnings so that we move forward stronger than we were before.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like the old-fashioned view of resilience where it's just about bouncing back. It's so much more than that. It's about bouncing forward stronger than you were before. So once we get people to understand a bit more about what resilience is, we talk about mindset, we talk about skill set, and we talk about tool set. And my job over the time that I work with people is to improve the resilient mindset, the resilient skill set, and the resilient tool set. So what we do to start is we do a psychometric measure at the very, very beginning, where we get a baseline measure of someone's overall resilience so that we can see and meet that person where they're at. That's really important. And then we come up with, because I have a specific model for resilience, we take our client through that method over a six week. Now it can be done every 2 weeks, so that could take 3 months, but it's a 6-stage program, and then we reevaluate at that point. And I think what's really, really lovely is I do get a little bit frustrated when someone says to me, oh, this is my physio or my chiropractor. It's nice that you know who they are, but if we're really, really brilliant at what we do, you shouldn't need us for a long time, but you might still want to work with us because of the benefits that you reap. But you should be definitely empowered and have built yourself and your skills in a way that you would do it without us.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So actually, what's so fantastic about the method that I've built out is that most people don't need more than 6 sessions. And for a lot of people, that can be really life-changing, even just 6 sessions.
So it's a learned skill. It's not something that is, well, actually, no. Are some people just inherently resilient?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. And if you look and do a nice deep dive of the research on resilience, there are personality traits that make someone potentially more predisposed to resilience than some others. Traits like perseverance or optimism. However, that's a tiny bit of the story, because what's so exciting and empowering about resilience is you can learn it and you can be taught. And that's what's so fantastic. And what we really do right from the beginning is we work on mindset. And we call it the resilient mindset, because if you thought of your own resilience like you're building it like you would build a tree, you would grow a tree, you've got to start from the roots.
Yeah.
And for us, the roots is the resilient mindset. So what we do there, and I really love this, I find this is the bit that's so exciting for all of us, is there's 4 stages to that. We start with raising awareness. And I'm sure you would agree, Ross, that lots of people are out there and they know that everything feels itchy, scratchy, but they don't actually really pinpoint what it is that's draining them or what it is that's sustaining them. So the first part of the mindset is to build out awareness. Because once we've got that, we can set some intention and give whatever it is that needs a bit of attention, the attention that it deserves. So that's the second piece of the mindset. I suppose my favourite, if I've got one, is the third bit, is where we start to see some brave honesty.
Mm-hmm.
And I really love that, because sometimes the hardest thing ever is to look yourself in the mirror and know with conviction what it is about how you're showing up that's maybe sabotaging you or holding you back. So the brave honesty piece is probably one of my favourite parts of the journey, because once we've got the brave honesty and it's coming through, we start to take total responsibility.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's so lovely when you get to that point.
And do you get that honesty from the psychometric tests when you're going through it, or is that a more of a sort of coaching questions that you go through after?
Yeah, I think what's really brilliant about the psychometric tool, we use a tool called RAW, which is Workplace Resilience and Wellbeing. It's the only psychometric tool in the world that actually measures not only someone's resilience, but how it impacts their well-being. Mm-hmm. And what's so lovely there is that there are inverse questions to make sure that what you say is actually following through with a theme, so that it wasn't just a fluke in the way that you answered.
Yeah.
So we get a really robust measurement, but it's very much through the coaching when we start to dive into that resilient mindset. And that's such a lovely experience for the person to, really slow down and spend time on them.
Yeah.
I don't know if we do that often enough.
I don't think we do. Life's fast-paced, isn't it? We're kind of onto the next thing, onto the next thing, onto the next thing, trying to fix this problem, helping that person, and not always looking inward.
Yeah.
And I guess sometimes we can go through life and have very similar situations crop up.
Yeah.
But we'll often be looking to blame somebody else.
Absolutely.
Rather than, well, the common denominator is me.
And you describe beautifully there what we talk about with our clients, which is the ladder of accountability. When you're either in blissful ignorance, or you're waiting and hoping, or you're blaming everyone else, that's a very powerless place to be.
Yeah.
So what we do, which is very much an enlightening experience for the people that go through it, is we take control back by getting that person more powerful. And that's exciting.
Yeah, I love that. So all of a sudden it's not the government's fault or their boss's fault or the economy's fault. It's like, right, what can I do to change the situation?
Well, we ask that very question. We were never taught to question our thoughts. But if you do, is it true? Is a first good question. And even if it was true that it was the government's fault, for example, well, how can you thrive despite its presence? Because it's about, we really work on controlling the controllables, influencing the influenceable, and on everything that sits outside of the circle, we have to really start finding some acceptance. And that's where we use a lot of mindfulness techniques, where we're working on sitting in the moment, letting it be. And we know about the mindfulness paradox, that the more you can do that, the less of a grip it holds on us, so it becomes less painful.
Mm-hmm.
And it is practice, but I think the most important thing for reassurance to people is that when people get that first psychometric and we get all these numbers back, I always say the numbers are totally irrelevant after the first session, because you've done the hard bit. You've started. What is so important is what we put in place so that the numbers come up. But the numbers themselves are only for us to put a line in the sand.
Yeah, like a benchmark. Like this is where we're starting. Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously it's very rewarding when you do it at the end to see just how far someone's come.
Do people generally have a slow incremental change, or
Great
do you
question.
get this light bulb moment? They go, oh, Glenda, just figured it out.
Do you know, I would actually say to you, being honest, it depends, because we talk about the 6 pillars of resilience. They're the tools that we're learning. So that we talk about the 6 aspects of resilience. So the foundation of resilience is the energy pillar. If it's an energy, like a fuel thing, we often think that's a real quick win, because we can deal with energy quite quickly, whether that's more healthy consumption, more physical activity, improving your boundaries, or sleep, for example. We can get real quick wins. But on the pillar of resilience, for example, like inner belief, which is critical, that you're your best supporter and that your inner critic is not going to take over your script, that is a bit slower sometimes, takes a bit more work.
Yeah.
But there is a big but. We see a lot of people that maybe were people pleasers, or people that always let people write their script. Once they realize that they can write their own script, it can be very liberating and it can happen really fast.
Okay, yeah, they're like, right, I see now.
Yeah, so it just depends on what aspects of resilience need the most work.
Yeah. So with the energy one, for example, so if we're linking to the energy pathway to resilience,
yeah,
is what you see then, that if someone has low energy, so they're sleep deprived, unfit, eating poorly, they then are less resilient? Is that the general?
400%. Yeah. People don't realize, and if I can just give you a few metaphors, you would never, and most people out there get so upset when their iPhone loses all its charge.
Yeah.
And we're all running around the house looking for a charger, because it's disastrous if the iPhone just switches off. But yeah, we don't always think that that's a problem when we do it to ourselves.
I like that. Yeah. You know, like if you think about ourselves as a big battery.
Yeah, we get to absolute zero before we sometimes take on board what your body's telling you. And I'd like to make the other metaphor that if you want high performance, you need to think of you as a Formula One sports car, not a Skoda.
Yeah.
So if you're going to put in average fuel, and that might be poor nutrition, poor diet, or what I call the major superpower, if you're not drinking water, which could be the biggest win that you do of anything, water and breathing, you can change everything pretty quickly. I was thinking the same, but I've got a little bit of orange in mind today. Quick story on that. I spent 2 years of my life with headaches, to the point where I did get some tests. And then I realised, which is absolutely crazy, I was just permanently dehydrated.
Yeah. I actually had a very similar patient 20 years ago, because I'm a physio, as you know, and they'd seen all sorts of different people, tried all manner of techniques. And when we spoke to them, or when I spoke to them, all they drank was coffee. That's all they drank. And not a lot of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
They were just dehydrated, and actually we put them on, their treatment was to drink water.
Yeah, absolutely.
They came back and they were fine. And they'd had
it's a complete superpower, isn't it? And, you know, when I was saying about, you know, thinking of yourself like a high performance sports car, it's really, really important. But the one that we see regularly as a big problem under that energy pillar is we don't move enough. And I do think, I really believe that that's why we're in the stress pandemic. Because I love Tony Robbins, the great leadership guru. And he always says, you know, where movement goes, energy flows.
Yeah.
And we're becoming more and more sedentary. So nice little tip for people. But I always say to people when I'm working with them on resilience, if you're at your desk and it's all going bad, the worst thing you can sometimes do is to try and improve your thinking by more thinking. Just completely change your state. Even for 5 minutes, you will come back and it will feel different.
Yeah.
So before we think about thinking, let's do a bit more moving. And we're not moving enough, even if that's informal, where it's just walking the dog. It's so critical to us as human beings. And, you know, I'd recommend to everybody, if you just even move a little bit more, you will feel it impacts your mental health.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. We are spending less and less time mobile, aren't we? But as human beings, we're designed to move. You know, we look like a jigsaw puzzle when you see the amount of joints we've got. We're supposed to be moving.
Absolutely. Well, that's I could steal that. That's very intuitive. It's true, isn't it? There's that many parts. We should be moving them.
Yeah. If we were supposed to stay still, we'd be one long bone. No, that would be it.
Absolutely. And the one that we see in this pillar, because the energy pillar for resilience is like the foundations of a house. You've got to build the rest on good foundations. And the one that's rocky that we see all the time right now is bad boundaries or loose boundaries.
So that's saying yes to everything, that type of thing.
Yeah, allowing people to control your diary. So, you know, you're maybe someone at work that's more introverted. You need some quiet headspace time, but everybody comes because you're in an open plan office, and you allow everybody to then infiltrate your whole day. And then you don't realize that you never had that time that you need to suit your character, your personality, the way you work. And essentially, what we try and do with people is we talk about building out a compassion calendar. You know, what does your calendar actually look like? Is it setting you up for thriving, or is it setting you up for surviving?
Wow, I like that. Yeah, so just setting aside time that is important for you and how you operate.
Absolutely. And I mean, something that alarms me in the corporate space, we find that lots of people just take no break.
Yeah.
And even a simple 15-minute break, you will come back more productive. Being able to, and we explain this nicely, but, you know, in terms of the more we feel stressed or pressure, the more our negativity bias, because we have got a brain that was wired for thousands of years ago when you either got eaten or you ate.
Yeah.
But life ain't like that anymore, but we still go into fight or flight a lot, which is not healthy for us if we're constantly feeling threat. So the more pressure we have, you know, children, career, friends, hobbies, and we pile it all up in our stress bucket, the more stressed we feel, our negativity bias shows up even more. So we get more negative in our thinking. And the problem that we find is that's an area, we call it the mood map, that we get to this high stress or exhaustion. And what we really need to do, all of us, is we've got to get into the other side of the mood map, which is performance or calm. And what we do when we're just achieving all the time is we're in that side of the mood map that causes stress or exhaustion. And then we wonder why our emotions are a bit all over the place, because we're not regulating them, because there are different chemicals that are going on depending on where you are in that mood map. And we've got to get back into that calm zone. We've got to soothe.
So
we don't do it enough.
Yeah, so part of teaching someone to be resilient could be teaching them to take more time for themselves.
Yeah, we absolutely work with people to get them to become much more aware of their mood map.
Yeah.
So from hour to hour, where you're in performance, which is amazing, the flow state that you talked about, are you in high stress, which is full of scary hormones like adrenaline and cortisol, not the best mix? Or are you exhausted, which is, again, not the best mix? Or are you in calm? And what we try to do is we try to get a better balance of people being able to self-regulate and come out of stress or exhaustion into the calm.
Yeah, because they're not bad per se, are they? Just how long we spend there.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. They're not terrible. We all need stress.
Yeah.
We need good stress in our life to be successful. But if we feel that that stress or exhaustion has become what we would call toxic,
Yeah.
where you get no relief and you constantly feel exhausted or you constantly feel stressed, that can be a very slippery slope to burnout.
Yeah, absolutely. I see that. So what are the other pillars then? So we've got energy, that's the foundation.
Yeah, we then have inner drive, which is your self-belief and your motivation.
Yeah, it's
So,
like
you know,
a little voice in your
yeah,
head.
and in there, it's all about, you know, how truly confident are you? Are you your biggest hurdle?
Hmm.
It's a big question to ask, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, one most people probably haven't asked themselves.
Not always, yeah. Another one that people, I think, really underplay is connection relationships as a pillar.
Yeah, I see that. It's an important one.
I think that, you know, if it's, you know, looking back in my career, I think that entrepreneurs, because we're often in a lonely place, and, you know, we have to be really thinking about, even in organizations, who looks after the leader or
Yeah.
the CEO, because often the person at the top doesn't get looked after. But they're also guilty sometimes of thinking that they are resilient, that they're strong, that they are stoic, therefore they can go at it alone.
Yeah, 100%. I actually had a conversation with someone just last week about that. And they were, a successful business owner with a business doing 8 figures. And he was like, it's lonely. So I can't tell my wife about this. He said, because she just says, well, it's your business. You know, you started it, figure it out. You can't talk to his staff because his staff would be like scared. What do you mean? You don't know what's going on, or you're stressed like that.
Yeah.
Pay my mortgage. You know, none of his friends were business owners. They were all employees. He said they don't get it.
Yeah.
So it can be really lonely. I get that.
Yeah, really important. You know, it's lovely to think about the relationships piece as a thriving group. Now, there's one thing here that I wish I had been taught before I got married, because I feel like it would potentially help people before they go on that slippery slope of thinking that that person's not maybe right for them. Because relationships are like train tracks, aren't they? You go down the track, but at points you might veer off to your own little journey somewhere. And that's okay, because, you know, that's us all growing at different rates. But we eventually have to be able to come back parallel on the track and come together back down and maybe go on another little journey along the way. But we've got to come back at points. And I think the lesson that I didn't know that was very much a game changer for me was understanding that you can't get it all in the one person, even if you think they're perfect.
Yeah.
So when we talk about your thriving group, we talk about, and maybe I could ask you, Ross, you know, who is your soother? Who is that person? Who is your mentor? Who is that person? Who's your challenger? We all need a lover because we need intimacy in our lives. But you might not get all that in the same person.
Yeah, 100%.
So it doesn't mean that your lover or your life partner, because they are not someone that can challenge you, means it can't work. But you still need challenge.
Yeah.
So it's about having a group of people that are your tribe that build you up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and about, I guess, understanding that is necessary, so then you can go out and find it.
Absolutely, because just as a little example of that, but I, as a non-negotiable, I have a coach. Now, I'm very mindful that not everybody can afford a coach, but there are people who could do that role that could be a friend.
Yeah.
But understanding what people bring to the journey and what you can give back is really, really important. And relationships are absolutely critical to resilience. And I should stress that they are the biggest drain on resilience in the workplace is relationships.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess a lot of people probably do just, if not thinking about the workplace, but thinking about your life partner, as you said, a lot of people I think will just expect that they're supposed to be perfect all of the time, but life's not like that. Two people will
Yeah.
never agree about everything. It's impossible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Myself,
It's so important to resilience.
Yeah.
And another pillar, and you've talked about it a lot on LinkedIn, but it is about your future focus. So we get a lot of people who will say, well, I just feel like a hamster on the wheel. I feel like I'm going round and round and round, and I can't jump off. Or they'll say, if I ask them to look at their future, it just looks really fuzzy. So we work to make it unfuzzy.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you really understand your purpose and your direction and where you're headed, the why, basically, if you looked at Simon Sinek and he talks about why,
yeah,
it's important that not only do you understand, even if you don't have a why, that's not the end of the world. Some people they haven't found their why, but they still understand direction and where they're going. Once we know that, we need to also see if it lines up with the bigger why of the company you work with.
Yeah.
And I've got to be honest, in COVID, that was something that fascinated me, because there was all of a sudden, because people were having reflection time and people were starting to understand some of the things that were really important to them, they hadn't then realised that what the itchy scratchy feeling was is that they were feeling disconnected to the people over here because they potentially didn't serve what their purpose and direction really was.
Yeah.
So there was quite a lot of friction going on where people felt that they maybe didn't align to the people they worked for and vice versa. So it was an interesting time.
So did you get a lot of people come to you after that then to say, what's this feeling? What do I do about it?
Yeah, we did. And I think that's actually, I call it the 8 gifts of the pandemic. And that's one of them, is I really genuinely believe that was a gift, that people got time to really reevaluate what was important to them.
Yeah.
So when we work on that future focus pillar, we really look at getting all the way back to life values and what's important to people.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's fascinating because if you speak to people, often there's people not even revisited their values for years. So that's quite a lovely process to go back and really think about what it means to be you and what's important to you.
Yeah, definitely what's important to you, what makes you tick.
Yeah.
I like the idea of there being, the gifts associated with COVID. And it's similar to something you said right at the start as well, which is resilience is about bouncing forwards.
Absolutely.
So there's always a lesson, whether something went well, whether something didn't go well. That's only a perspective of an event. COVID was neither good nor bad. You could see it either way, and that's a great example there. That there are gifts in every day or every situation.
And that's really important, because I think you've said that. What you make me think about when you say that is that COVID is also down to how you framed it. And we see this all the time. This is the next pillar of resilience, but being able to have flexible thinking is critical. So being open-minded to things maybe not being what you thought they were, and also positively framing things. Now, I just want to put this out there. I don't even like people who thinks that we need to be positive all of the time. That's not true. It's difficult and it's not real life. But what we ask for is a rule of thumb that if you were going to assess your thoughts over the last month, we would be hoping that 2/3 are more positive and 1/3 would be maybe more negative.
Yeah.
And then we work to develop techniques that help you to turn a negative into something that can help you rather than hinder you, even if it's a negative.
Yeah.
But positively framing things is really important, because the one thing I do think we missed a trick on in the pandemic is I think businesses should have done a bit more reflection on everything we learned. Because I would say to everybody that's listening now, you are more resilient because of the pandemic.
100%, without a doubt. And it is interesting because probably people did fall into one or two camps. It was quite, I guess, black or white. It was either a terrible thing and you sat on the sofa and ate pizza and drank too much alcohol and put weight on, or you got out on your bike, went for runs, walked the dog more, connected with your family, and came out stronger.
Yeah.
Not many people, I think, probably existed in the middle.
I think you're absolutely right, but I would put my whole life savings on the fact that every single person who experienced it has built resilience that they don't even know they've got. And we see that with resilience. It's really important. You might learn lots of mindset, skill set and tool set, but it's got a buffer effect. It's got a little sleeper effect as well. So that will sit there. And if you had another pandemic, God forbid, you would be stronger next time round. So you would use the skills. And that's what resilience shows us. It's got a sleeper effect, and then it demands you to then practice them on that next adverse event.
Yeah. So you're like, okay, I recognize this.
Yeah.
What tools have I got in my toolbox to implement and change my behavior?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what kind of tools do you teach?
Oh my goodness, where do we start? So this is what's so lovely about the work that we do, because it's really critically important that we never tell people what to do. It's all about coaching people, not telling people. And the weird thing, Ross, is every single person has their wisdom. So we have to ask good questions. But what we tend to do when we're building tools is we ask them to start by what is sustaining you and what is draining you, and start journaling that every day. So when I felt terrible, what was it that drained you today?
Yeah.
The next day, what was it that made it a great day? And that's the awareness piece. So we start with the tool of becoming curious. We ask people to become a feelings detective.
Right, I like that.
So once people start becoming aware, we can then add tools. So for example, for the energy pillar, it could be something as simple as, you mentioned it earlier, they come up with their wisdom and say, I drink coffee all day and I end up, I'm having the coffee crashes just like sugar. So a tool there would be to replace it with water, potentially.
Yeah.
After 12 o'clock, for example. So in answer to your question, I kid you not, most of what we do, we use positive psychology tools. We do a huge amount around mindfulness as a positive psychology technique. We use a lot around breathing. We do a huge amount in the space of gratitude, because there are a lot of people who think that's fluffy, not realizing that the evidence for gratitude is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Probably the most significant piece of research was Daniel Seligman, who I think is amazing. He asked 1,000 people to just put down every day for 30 days 3 things that they were grateful for that day. And in that study, out of the 100 most depressed people on a depression score, they had reduced their depression score by over 50% in that 30 days.
Wow, that's incredible, isn't it?
Amazing. So the challenge we have in life is you've got to keep doing it to build a habit, and it takes about a month.
Yeah.
So you've got to suspend judgment, and you've just got to keep going, because sometimes people quit just as they're about to experience the benefits.
Yeah.
So
and you've got to feel it there as well, don't you? That's the thing. You can't just write it down and go, oh,
absolutely.
I am grateful for the sunny weather today.
Yeah.
You've got to actually feel that emotion.
Yeah. And I mean, I just want to give you one practical example, because when I said to you, literally, we probably use over 150 positive psychology techniques and we just pick what suits the client. We do have our favorites. So for the overthinking that a lot of people do, don't they? You know, where the thought might come in and you say, I'm not good enough. Why bother showing up today? I'm just going to fail at this. Nobody's going to like me. And before we know it, we like to give people a metaphor of being at a bus stop. So if you imagine you're at the bus stop and your thoughts are buses coming in, if you were genuinely going to do that in the spirit of getting on the bus, you would look to see where it was going. Or if you then jump on and you realise you're on the wrong bus,
get back off.
You might then go, this is not going where I want it to go. I need to get off.
Yeah.
And we teach that bus stop technique to our clients. So when these thoughts are becoming rampant, we ask people to come back to the bus stop. So it's a bit like a safe space. And we visualize coming back to the bus stop and being a silent observer for the next thought that's coming in. And then asking yourself, is this thought helpful to me right now? Yeah, it is. I might go on that journey. And then I might go on the next one. But at any time, you can decide to get off that bus. Yeah. People love that one.
Yeah, I like that one. It's similar to something I talk about with my kids. And I would say, in every situation, ask yourself, what do you want the desired outcome to be?
Yeah.
And then check whether your behavior is going to actually get you there.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what's beautiful about that, and again, it's another tool, but you're asking them to find space between resilient thought and resilient action. Because what we tend to do is we get that thought, and then before we've even tried to regulate that thought, we've sent the flame email.
Yeah.
Or we've basically told someone to get lost, and it's very powerful when you start to realize that you're in control and a thought is only a thought till you give it meaning.
Yeah, I like that.
So if you don't like what's coming in, we do ask people metaphorically in their own mind to say, stop, thank you for showing up. That's not too helpful. Now bring me a better thought.
I like that. That's
good. I love that. I use it a lot.
Yeah.
When it starts to play, and it's all coming in. Glenda, you're tired today. This is not, not going the way I want it to go. Nice. And I like, because I'm quite a expressive person. So stop. Thank you for showing up. I know you're just trying to protect me. I'm fine, thank you, but now bring me a better thought.
Yeah, brilliant.
Works really well. So yeah, there's so much that we do, Ross, but every client is unique. So when we know our client and they know themselves, they tell us what they're going to do.
Yeah, fantastic. I guess that's a perfect journey with coaching, isn't it? Where you, as you say, you're not telling them what to do. They come to their own decision and they go, I'm going to do this. And it feels congruent. It feels right because they've made the decision themselves.
Absolutely, yeah. And obviously we give lots of support where we will say, have you considered this? But they will always come up and find the wisdom, which is great.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, well, if someone is listening to this and they're thinking, I've got to have Glenda in my life, I need to work on some of these things, where would somebody find you? How do they reach out?
Oh, well, that's nice and easy. So they can go to wetalkwellbeing.com. Or they can just go to my name, GlendaRivoallan.com, and on my personal website, they can read up all about Resilient as Fudge. The Resilient as Fudge method, which centres around the mindset, the skill set, and the tool set, that will be out in August, and it will be available on Amazon. And the idea behind the book, there are 52 images, one image for every week of the year. There are 12 monthly themes, and every week there's a practice. So the idea is, I know we're all busy, so if you look at the picture, you read only 2 paragraphs, you will get the gist of the technique, and then you practice, and it allows you to journal in there. And the idea is it's a lovely, cute little size so that it could be your friend in your bag.
Oh, I love that. That's great.
Yeah, and the idea is you can just go through it. You can go, and skip pages and go back. But for people who like the idea of it, it's a 1-year journey.
Ah, great. Yeah, I do like that. I've got the Daily Stoic on my desk next to me.
Yes, I've got that. Yeah. So
Love
something
that.
similar, isn't it?
Yeah. One day, little bite-sized nugget of information.
Yeah. So there's 52 techniques in there.
Brill. And what are the other couple of books you've written? Because this is your third one.
Yeah. So the middle one was the Mindfulness Advantage in Entrepreneurship. I'm very passionate about. Ross, genuinely, I worry about entrepreneurs because I feel that. I know I discussed the loneliness factor, and there's so much research coming out now that loneliness can be one of the biggest predictors of scary disease and bad health. So that worries me. And I just feel when we go on the entrepreneurial journey, we sometimes get advice once we're way down the road. And, I want all entrepreneurs to flourish during their journey and not just survive it or not survive. So that was the reason behind that book. And then the first book is an 8-week mindfulness course for resilience called Mindfulness for Wellbeing.
That's one I've got on my bookshelf there. I think, just going back to what you said there, we inherently we are still the same creatures we've been for millennia, and we were in tribes for a long time, weren't we? We need that community, which you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And the journey of a business owner, of an entrepreneur, can be lonely, as we've said more than once. So it's removing us from where we inherently feel safe and will thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. And safety for everybody out there. If you don't, and whether that's your home or your workplace, you've got to feel psychologically safe. Not just physically safe, but also psychologically safe. And that is the final pillar of resilience, which is your environment.
Right, yeah.
We know that if a bonsai tree doesn't grow, I love a bonsai, you wouldn't automatically give up on it and say it's never going to grow. You would maybe move it somewhere else into a different environment. And environment is critical to resilience because it can sabotage us of our resilience because we've not set ourselves up for thriving.
That's another brilliant one. We've had some great thoughts today, but I love that idea of moving the bonsai tree.
Yeah.
It just seems so obvious when you say it like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Move it into the light or give it some more water or whatever it might be.
And, when we do our work with corporate, Ross, it's one thing that we are asking corporates to do as a matter of importance. I'm just going to be completely, this is just who I am. I can't be anything other than very honest about this fact. But we get asked to do resilience interventions for individuals, but the culture's toxic. Now, that's just a stick and plaster. You've got to go all the way back to the environment and the culture. Mm-hmm. And even if you're not in a business and you're an individual, how have you set your culture up, your self-culture, your family culture, and your environment?
Yeah.
It's critically important.
Yeah, definitely. Along the same theme, I guess, is where I'm working now. If the area is spotless and I'm on top of it, then it helps my general well-being.
Absolutely.
I've had a crazy couple of days and there's piles of things all over the place. It doesn't help my mental state.
Absolutely. And some people more than others. And it's funny you mention it. When my husband and I were always doing, we used to do houses and do them up. And then we lived in this one, we lived in it, and it became really, really stressful because you are reminded of what's going in that stress bucket.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's food for thought. It's really important to understand how you can help your environment, and not to keep you too much longer. But I think environment is really interesting when it looks at people's sleep because they have just sabotaged the environment for a good night's sleep. So, they may be in a warm room they're letting light come in. They're using blue light on their IT just before bed. They're eating a meal at 9 or 10 at night. They're then maybe answering emails. Honestly, for good sleep, you need to sort the environment.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the basic things we talk about at Alphagenix. You've got to make those quality lifestyle choices, and one of the basic ones is definitely about sleep.
Yeah.
Well, Glenda, I've loved our conversation. We've been off on all sorts of twists and turns, but finding out more about the work you do with resilience has been genuinely fascinating. I've loved it. Hopefully lots of people are going to reach out to you now after watching this, and we shall keep in touch and hopefully jump on another one of these in the not too distant future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.